strong.
Chapter 101, Chaos. Xie Fusion only felt heartache when he heard Qin Lao's words. Those words seemed like farewell. He knew that Shij was very old, and Hua Xiang was not wrong. This age should have been nurtured by Shij for years. Where can he survive at this level of war? But Shi came for them, because hearing the sound of the wind from Zibai Palace cannot calm down. Sir. Hua Fuyu's eyes in Yi Fusion's arms also have tear marks, and there is an unknown feeling in his heart. He doesn't want to influence other people. He even told him to tell Yi Fusion not to come to the Nandu family today, but Yi Fusion still came, and now that even his teacher is here, he is very uncomfortable. Brother, why are you doing this? Yan Shao, the head of Zibai Palace, took a step forward, lamenting in his heart that today's array, he did not think that Qin Lao's appearance could change anything, even with the addition of Yi Xiangai. No, there is a big difference between the two teams. Brother Zihua Xiang came by order of the king, and everything is a foregone conclusion. Both Hua Jiayu and Yi Fusion were controlled by the royal family, or they died outright. There is no third way. Wu Qin always seemed to not hear his words, and said kindly, Fusion, this song hasn't been named since I realized it. Today, let you mention it. Okay. Yi Fusion was uncomfortable, but still nodded slowly. When his voice fell, Qin Lao's eyes showed a smile. Then, the soul of life shines. Qin's soul is not an illusion, but is like a real piano, floating in front of Qin Lao. Wu Qin always raised his hands and put his fingers on the strings, still looking elegant. Kill. Hua Xiang uttered a cold voice. Yan Shao and Han Mo moved at the same time. The terrible storm suffocated everything, and headed straight for the people on the crane. At the same time, Hemming's very bright voice came out, and at the same time Qin Lao hit the rope. Hemming and Kan's voice came out, and the sound shook the sky. The killer storm was detonated and destroyed directly. Just one sound made the people in the audience tremble. Yan Shao looked at Qin Lao. It seems that after years of concentrated practice, although he is old, but he has gained the true meaning of piano sound magic. His brother was even more terrifying. However, the Qin Yin spell required mental strength. Qin Yin's more powerful spells are, more so. How could Qin Lao be able to sustain today's great war? Yun Huazhang's appearance was cold, and his palm was drawn towards the void. For a moment, there seemed to be a straight line cutting forward, and the space was cut into two halves. Qin Lao's 10 fingers flicked on the strings at the same time, and the cranes flapped their wings, slowly rose, and raised their heads to make more and more sounds. They mingled with the sound of the piano. Qiu will be famous in the East China Sea. The terrifying piano sound pierced into the eardrums of the crowd. In just a moment, they felt the momentum contained in the high-pitched sound of the piano, and the surrounding attacks against Qin Lao continued to explode and shatter, centered on the fairy tale. A loud piano storm arose in the room, sweeping everything away. The world froze. The terrible ice storm wanted to freeze everything and freeze space. At the same time, the ***** tree appeared in the sky, and its branches and vines grew wildly, covering the space and rolling towards the fairy. The surrounding powerful cast spells, blocking the crane from leaving this space. As if he didn't see it, he was still focused on the music. His 10 fingers had almost turned into ghosts, and it was hard to see his movements, but the sound of the piano was still high. With Qin Yin's rise, Qin Lao's old body is now blooming with astonishing momentum, white hair flying, like a sword, his robes rush and ring with the wind. The current Qin Lao seems to be old and young, he is so impressive that he wants to be higher than the sky. Hakan sounded chaotic, a terrible storm swept through everything, and I saw the frost that covered the sky was constantly exploding, blocking the world, or the rolling branches and vines were also badly damaged. Once this song is released, the world can't. Yi Fusion stood behind Qin Lao, and he quietly listened and watched all of it. The increasingly high and impulsive piano sound that constantly made the blood in his body fall and roar. Chaos. In the Nandu family, all the strong people looked up at the sky, their hearts trembled. It is impossible to imagine the sound of a piano so loud being played by a twilight old man, as if to open himself heaven, sky and law. Lyric can destroy all spells, make the fury between heaven and earth ferocious, and the incantations cannot be condensed to appear unless the sound of the piano is interrupted. Are you crazy? Hua Xiang's body rose into the air, and he followed the crane, and he naturally felt the horror of this piano sound. As he continued to gather strength and amplify the sound of the piano, his powers would become more and more sinister. The brother did not have the strong mental strength to support such a piano sound spell, unless he was already dead. Yan Qin was so fascinated by the piano that he would never hear it. The gong of the crane continued to pull, and after the sound of the piano broke, he flew out of the Nandu family. As if today, the old man will definitely take the couple out of here. Chasing. Hua Xiang spat out an icy cold voice. I saw a strong man step on the dressing table, followed by a crane. Today, such a lineup just wants to escape based on Qin Lao and Yi Xiang's kindness. Tao Nan Dao Tai also chased. He witnessed that the spell that was continuously rolling towards Qin Lao was directly broken by Qin Yin, and there was another wave in his heart. Wuquang Palace, Lord Yi Xiang, Zibai Gong Lao, the two top figures in the East China Sea, are in danger to Yi Fuxian. If Yi Fuxian promises him to the south of the king's chamber, he can promise Yi Xiang how old is Hecken. Maybe he doesn't have anything, but he just appreciates it. With talent, can the two big men hesitate to kill him? I put my thoughts aside. Nan Dao Tai didn't think too much. The only thing to do now was to leave Yi Fuxian. Today, he has chosen to kill. If he let go, it would be an endless problem. Sun and his team rushed out of the Nandu family, and those who came to the banquet also followed, and wanted to see the fate of the lovers. Qin Yin was still raised. Yi Xiang stood beside Qin Lao, glanced at the old man, with respect in his eyes. Naturally, he could see many things. This was probably the last thing Qin Lao could teach. A Song Yi Fuxian turned around, turned his back on Qin Lao, and looked at the people chasing him. He saw a powerful spell being broken by a high-pitched piano sound before he came. His eyes were so calm at this moment, without any waves. Master, the title of this song, The Chaos of Rivers and Mountains. Yi Fuxian said slowly. Yi Xiang's eyes shone sharply. Yi Fuxian named this piano song, The Chaos of Rivers and Mountains. The meaning is clear. If he doesn't die today, he will chase South Duzhang Mountain. There was a smile on the old man's face, and he nodded. Very good. Wu Shan had already landed outside the Nandu family mansion. I saw a group of people standing in the sky. Chia Feng took care of them. I didn't expect Yi Fuxian and them to come out. This shocked Chia Feng and the others in Donghaifu. Chia Feng wielded a sharp sword and danced in the void. The airflow around him frantically turned into a terrifying sword. When the crane came, he moved forward, stabbed the crane, and accompanied him in front of him. Okay, the endless swords in the heavens and the earth around him followed his body, and a terrible river of swords appeared, destroying everything. Zhan rolled towards the fairy tale. Qin seems to always see nothing but play, and the sound of the piano continues to increase, to break Zhou Xiaoshan. The terrifying piano sound instantly penetrated Zhan and rushed into Chia Feng's mind. Chia Feng, who saw the sword, immediately stopped, spit out blood, and looked pale, but the sword did not stop. He swept forward, and the river of swords was still rolling forward. Yi Xiang took a step forward of the crane, and his fist exploded in the air at the same time. The speed of the punch was extremely fast as a ghost and a heavy punch, but in an instant, 1,000 punches actually appeared in front. The shadow pierced the river of swords, destroyed everything. Shan walked with the shadow of the fist, passed straight through without stopping, and continued to advance. Chia Feng's body fell down, and he looked up to see the figure flying up. His face was very ugly. Spiritual power is not what he is good at. Piano sound magic can attack mental strength, and this song is played by Qin Lao. If he dares to fight hard, he will die and die. Then he saw Hua Xiang, Nan Dao Tai, and Ziwei Gong, both chasing, and knew that they were not willing to compete with music. Brother, of course, this piano is amazingly strong, but how long can you last if you play like this? Hua Xiang said lightly. You can't go. Wu Qinyan still. The old man did not mean to stop at all. He slowly looked up, looked into the distance, and smiled. Yi Xiang, you take Fuxian's reconciliation and they leave. Yun Yizhang looked deeply at the old man. He didn't pretend, and nodded directly. Okay. Sir. Yi Fuxian's heart shook, and he seemed to know what was about to happen. Child, son, don't be sad. I'm almost there. It won't be long. If it's really possible for you to leave today, it might not be a happy thing. Qin Lao's voice was very calm. Master, aren't you still watching our big wedding? Hua Jiu cried. Son, the teacher is old. I'm afraid he won't be able to live that long. Promise you both will be good. As I said last time, always love like a teenager. The old man said with a smile, and then he was fit. Suddenly turning around, he said, Little sister, continue to take him away, don't come back. He said. He stepped forward directly, got off the crane, and walked towards the people who came after him. In the eyes of Wu Xian, his big eyes, tears are also dripping, and he is flapping his wings rapidly, but still moving forward without stopping. Sir. Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu shouted. Yi Xiang secretly saw all this, said, Don't disappoint Qin Lao. Live. Chapter 102, Tragic. Yan Qin played in the void. A terrible piano storm sounded, covering the vast space and facing the soldiers chasing after him. Seeing him like this, Hua Xiang sneered, and his brother asked his own way. You continue to chase, he left it to me. Hua Xiang said, and then walked towards Qin Lao, stepping into the terrible storm of piano sound at this time. May reach its limit. Wu Qin Lao did not care, and continued to play. Qin Yin storm swept across the sky, and then, I saw that the fate of the soul appeared in the air, leaving Qin Lao's palm. However, a shocking scene appeared, the piano floating in the air without anyone's control, still playing, as if he could play. I look at King Lao's body, every illusory light is flying, and every illusory Meng is like King Lao's ghost, and is constantly integrated into King Lao's soul. Jaina's soul, hovering above the sky. The strings beat freely, high-pitched voices trembled between the heavens and the earth, and the power of the terrifying sound enveloped the entire space within, and no one could leave it. Yan Shao and Han Mo, the masters of Zivai Palace who wanted to continue chasing, stopped and looked at King Lao. I saw that King Lao sat there and closed his eyes. It seemed to be very peaceful, but above his head, the soul of the piano was still ringing, the sound of the piano continued to enter his ears, and the sound of the piano that could not continue to rise, at this time was raised again, became more and more scary. They couldn't keep chasing and had to muster up their mental strength to fight back, otherwise the consequences would be dire. Even if he was as strong as a Chinese, at this moment his footsteps stopped and he saw Kan's soul playing alone in the void. At this moment, he finally understood what King Lao was going to do. He gave in and begged for mercy. I played this last song with my own life. With the sound of the harpsichord constantly ringing in the ears, some people showed painful expressions, holding their heads with both hands, and then saw several people spitting blood, their faces were pale, and even some people who were not strong enough fell directly to the ground, suffering wrinkles. Painful with. The only ones that can withstand this piano storm are the strongest. The piano notes that were changed by the dead souls were still beating, constantly crushing the strong below, making them lose their combat power one by one. On top of Hu Kan's soul, the beating note seemed to transform into the illusory figure of the old man, walking towards Hua Xiang and Nan Dao Tai step by step. Nuo Qinyun and the two of them appeared a lot of old Daokan imaginary figures, along with notes, went straight to Hua Xiang and Nandu Tai. Hua Xiang closed his eyes, and the terrifying mental storm turned into a sharp sword. He wanted to erase a lot of ghost images, but saw that the ghost images were integrated into Kan's lifelong cultivation and mental strength, and continued step by step towards Hua Xiang and Nan Dao Tai. Finally, the ghost stepped in front of Hua Xiang and Nan Dao Tai, causing the two men to fly wildly. In the next moment, the ghosts went straight into their bodies and into their minds. Su Qinhun's strings were still pounding. Hua Xiang and Nan Dao Tai both closed their eyes, as if refusing something. Pooh. It seemed like a long time later, Nan Dao Tai vomited blood, only feeling weak, and he fainted and fell to the ground. Then, Hua Xiang also groaned. His blood was spit out, his face was as pale as paper, and his body was slightly bent. Even though he was in better shape than Nan Dao Tai, it was not much better. Boom. Another explosion. Hua Xiang stepped back continuously, bleeding again, barely supporting himself without falling. Bang. It seemed that it was prepared for Hua Xiang on purpose, and the last sound from the violin vibrated in Hua Xiang's mind. His supporting body finally fell to the ground, blood staining his shirt. With his majesty, he was forced to be so miserable by King Lao before he could release his strength, even though the other party was playing with his life. Finally, the beating strings gradually stopped, and then everyone saw that the soul of the piano was destroyed by itself, and the light disappeared between the sky and the earth, as if it had never existed before. The sound of crickets disappeared completely. When I saw King Lao again, I saw him sitting there calmly. His face was very calm and serene, like a statue. He's dead, keep chasing. Hua Xiang said coldly. Although Yan Shao and Han Mo suffered some injuries, but King Lao's last attack did not hit him, they continued to chase forward, and Chia Feng also took back. The horse rushed over and looked at the scene below. Chasing people, Hua Xiang immediately ordered. Yes, Hua Xiang. Chia Feng nodded and continued to chase. After they left, Hua Xiang's eyes stared at the statue-like figure of the old man with a complex look. Brother, although I don't really like you, your character is too thin, but I didn't expect the Twilight Year, but it was amazing. I will remember your tone today. Hua Xiang looked at the old man and said, it is a pity that if you die, you will not get their life. They can't escape. After all, Hua Xiang sat down and healed. Not far from him, Nan Dao Tai was also sitting there. Her face was still pale. King Lao chose to use all his strength to attack the two before he died, perhaps to stay. Both of them are the strongest. But Yan Shao and Han Mo were not ordinary, not to mention the soldiers led by Chia Feng were not injured then. As Hua Xiang thought, Zivai Palace can overwhelm the other 6 palaces at Tokai Academy. The masters of Yan Shao and Han Mo are not weak at all, and the wind spell envelops the body to make them chase as fast as possible, even if it is the speed of the crane is not as fast as theirs. The fairy crane was not as tall as Yan Shao. Zhu Yizhang stood behind Shan and saw Yan Shao and Han Mo chasing after him, and he faintly guessed something, only to see him say, straighten up, don't worry about me. Senior. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Xiang. Let's be affectionate and think that I will die for you. I don't fight but I will go. You ask for more blessings. Yi Xiang said and stepped back. Yi Fuxian was relieved when he heard what he said. A hot-tempered but very intelligent person should always know how to make the most profitable choices. Behind, Yan Shao and Han Mo saw Yi Xiang coming, and their bodies scattered directly to the side. They are not together. Obviously, chasing Qin Lao before teaching them a few lessons, and they can't be dragged away. Yi Xiang to stay can only leave one person. Yi Yizhang cursed in his heart, these two cunning people. He walked towards Yan Shao, the main owner of Zibai Palace, without any hesitation. Yan Shao is stronger, and he is good at the nature of the wind, which can increase both him and Han Mo's speed. Therefore, choosing Yan Shao naturally allowed Yi Fuxian to give them less stress. Yi Xiang, we haven't played against each other for so many years, Yan Shao said faintly as Yi Xiang approached him. I have a chance today. Yi Xiang stepped forward and walked towards Yan Shao without any hesitation. Yi Fuxian's side can only rely on themselves. If they are intercepted by the two, it will only be more dangerous. Han Mo continued to chase, and soon Chia Feng also brought the mighty man. Just glanced at the battle between Yan Shao and Yi Xiang. They ignored them, and the person to be killed was still ahead. I will go one step further. Chia Feng said. He walked with his sword, approached the extreme, chased forward, and after a while, he joined Han Mo to catch up with the crane in front. The flying crane stopped, his head turned, and he looked at the three Yi Fuxians on his back, making several long chirping sounds. Yi Fuxian seemed to realize what he meant, saying, "Seniors, let us go." Wu Shan nodded. Yi Fuxian glanced at Nandu Wenyan, and saw that Nandu Wenyan nodded at him taking care of seniors. Yi Fuxian said, and then Nandu Wenyan, Yi Fuxian, and Hua Xiaoyu continued to move forward. As soon as they got off, Shan went to Han Mo and Chia Feng. The roar of chirping sounded extremely loud, turning into a sonic attack and oscillating on Han Mo and Chia Feng's eardrums. Chase, said Han Mo, heading towards the crane. Chia Feng nodded, trying to get around, but saw the crane's wings flicker, and the buzzing sound of the crane came out again, while flapping its wings and landing in front of him instantly. Claw caught it. The beast of sin. Chia Feng killed with the sword, but saw Shan immediately dodged his attack, and went towards Han Mo, who was hunting, trying to restrain the two of them. Han Mo and Chia Feng both frowned. At this time, Chia Feng's subordinates chased after them, and Chia Feng ordered, chase them. Furthermore, he and Han Mo surrounded the cranes one after another and did not let them go to the rescue. The army passed and continued onward. Now there are only 3 of them. Elite Donghaifu was enough to easily annihilate them. The only Nandu Wenyan who was threatening could not be blocked, so Chia Feng was greatly relieved. As they expected, Nandu Wenyan continued to escape not far away and was intercepted. The 3 of them stopped, and Nanduan looked at Yi Fuxian beside him. You take Xiu away. There is no point. Yi Fuxian, still holding Wajiayu, shook his head and fled all the way, but after all, their strength was still too weak. There were too few people. The other party continued to kill them, and after they chased after them. The situation is already difficult to fly. Tao Nanduyan also understands that today, do you want to die here? Poor Qin had always fought for their last chance, but either way, nothing could be changed. Chapter 103, The Emperor of Light. Xuanyue Xiang came to the king to sit in the Nandu family, while the main army of the Donghaifu government surrounded Qin Garden. In fact, he had already prepared Hua Xiaoyu and Yi Fuxian to fight, and he could kill him on the spot. After that, Hua Xiang was in the middle of the Nandu family, so Yi Fuxian, when Yi Fuxian arrived at the Nandu family, he let Nandu Dai let him in, just waiting for Yi Fuxian to take the initiative to die. For Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu, the king's life was a dead end. Hua Xiang was confident in controlling everything. In fact, it is the same, even if Qin Lao comes to play rivers and mountains with his life, he can't change the ending. The only thing he didn't expect. It was Yi Fuxian who revealed his peerless talent to encourage Nan Dao Tai to react, and Nan Dao Tai trembled slightly. At this time, the Donghaifu army descended to the mighty, staring at the 3 figures in front of him. Chia Fan was still inside, he was watching Yi Fuxian die. Kill, that woman will save her life first. Chia Fan smiled with an evil smile, and the soldiers immediately killed. Nanduan Yin stood in front of him, a terrible mental power broke out, and he danced wildly, and saw the Donghai spear in the hands of many people in the government shaking steadily. In order to free their hands, some weak people can't control them. Spears flew from their hands and then pierced themselves. Die and fight. The strong people in the heavenly country opened their mouths indifferently, the spell bloomed, and they killed in the direction of the southern Duyan. He saw the sky not far behind them, and a figure rushed forward at a fast speed. Seeing the scene ahead, his body swooped down and turned into lightning. The spell fell in front of Nandu Wenyan. A figure in the sky fell from the sky. A loud sound, the spell exploded, the world roared, and a beautiful figure appeared beside Nandu Wenyan. The figure filled with volumes of violence is actually a woman. Thank you. Nandu Wenyan faced the human. I'm not here to save you, Tang Lan said coldly, fight. Taunan Duyan nodded, and the 2 former rivals were currently fighting side by side. Their souls were released, and Nandu Wenyan's soul was beautiful and strange. It turned out to be a crown. When the crown fell on Nandu Wenyan's head, she was like a queen above, the mental strength was worse fluctuating. Flowering, all the weapons of the people under the sky trembled. Tang Lan glanced at Nandu Wenyan, with a hint of jealousy and depression in her eyes. After this woman was a royal family, her temperament was indeed more extraordinary than hers. Tang Lan's life soul is very ruthless, she is a fierce white demon tiger with 2 wings, like a tiger king. Tang Lan, do you know why Huanfeng chose her over you? Look at your soul. A strong man in a heavenly situation laughed ironically. You seek death, Tang Lan said coldly, she hated others for scorning her life and soul. Will the tigress show strength? The man sneered, as if he wanted to anger Tang Lan. Roar. A terrible tiger howled out, and a tiger figure whizzed out and rushed out, and went straight to the other side. Tang Lan stepped on the ground, her body seemed to be covered by the shadow of a tiger, and her wings were shining. In his body flickered, and he rushed into the crowd with the shadow of a tiger. There was an instant blood bloom, and many people instantly flew out. At the same time, Nandu Wenyan is controlling behind him. He is a powerful spiritual master, gifted as a controlling object, and even a human body. Zunhua Jiu perfectly inherited his talent and interest, and changed it. Surround them. Chia Fan hid behind and said coldly, the army was oppressive, and many spells exploded at the same time, continuously exploding. Even though they couldn't help them for a while, they surrounded them. Xie Fusion saw a flash of golden wings behind this scene and continued to turn around. He knew that staying here would only be a burden to Aunt Tang and his wife, and it would have no effect at all. Chia Fan brought the team of people to the back, then passed through the battlefield and continued to chase Yi Fusion. Nandu Wenyan and Tang Lan were surrounded by the crowd and wanted to escape the trap. The other party clearly understood his intentions and the attack became even more violent, restraining them. Chia Fan saw Yi Fusion's escaping figure in front of him. The evil smile on his face became stronger and stronger. I didn't expect so many big people to want him to die. He had fled up to this point, but in the end, he still had to die at his hands. Fly. Chia Fan's voice was full of jokes, and the strong man with legal conditions beside him accelerated and intercepted Yi Fusion. Now, almost all of Qin Lao and Qin Yuan's people have participated in the war, and only a few of the younger characters have not participated in the war. Now, who else will save Yi Fusion? Yi Fusion turned around, looked at Chia Fan with frozen eyes. When he was in Qingzhou City, it was Chia Fan who almost killed him. I didn't expect it to be the same in the East China Sea. Really pretty. Chia Fan glanced at the stunning figure in Yi Fusion's arms, and looked at him coldly. Xi killed Yi Fusion. Chia Fan sneered, some strong people memorized Falun Gong, and then killed Yi Fusion in the past. The sound of a roar came, and the ancient trees of the soul world appeared and shone in the air. Suddenly, the world of ancient trees and souls absorbed the spirits of heaven and earth greedily. Before his death, he did not use this soul in the Nandu family. In order not to expose him, he thought that the true father would appear at that time. However, he was wrong and the right father did not appear. He was confused and didn't understand why. At this time, there is nothing to hide when it is really on the verge of extinction, just for the sake of vitality, although it is still very slim. Chia Xiaofan saw this life and soul looking down, but even this life and soul. No wonder that Zhao Xiang will give you an order. What a genius! Unfortunately, your life is unattainable. Chia Fan said, Yi Fusion's body, the aura of nature, violently fled. Qiantusuo was crazy about Go's powerful killing law. One of the strong people killed was a sea of fire that burned everything. The vines of the 1,000 locks continued to burn in a terrifyingly high temperature. Other people's palms are heading towards Yi Fusion's body. This person is not only a country of law. The strong ones are all quite strong in the realm of law. The realm is too vast to be able to resist. A printed flame palm was printed. Yi Fusion was quickly retreated by the wind spell, but was still hit by the palm of his hand, hitting his shoulder, causing his shirt to burn on his shoulder, exposing flesh, and his body was also crushed, but he was still blown away. Hold your body steady and don't fall, endure the strong pain and hug Wajiayu. Fairy, sorry, I still can't marry you. Yi Fusion looked at the Waji in his hands and said, I am very happy to be with you. Hua Jiu smiled brightly, and the moment when it would come to the Nandu family, she was already mentally prepared, so when she actually faced this moment, she looked very beautiful. Calm down, and Yi Fusion is still by his side. Yes. Yi Fusion smiled and nodded. He raised his head. Yi Fusion looked at those who were killed in a strong state of law, and smiled. A revered soul was released, and in an instant, the world was very beautiful. When I saw this scene, the strong people in the country of law stopped involuntarily and stopped trembling, staring at Yi Fusion's figure. Is this still human? What the hell are they going to kill today? Consult how, if you let me go today and go with me, you will definitely be better off than following Chia Fan Kaiang. Yi Fusion laughed at the realms located in France. They had reached the end of the road, and they had to give it a try. Hope was slim, but still try. Chia Fan, who came behind him, also remained, his heart shaking. Is there really such a monster in the world? He suddenly remembered one thing: when he first fell into the Beast Gorge on Tianyao Mountain in Qingzhou City, Yi Fuxian came out alive. Now when he saw such a dazzling soul of life, something astonishing appeared in his mind. Ah dear, didn't you die on Tianyao Mountain because of Emperor Yi Qing's inheritance? Chia Fan stepped on the cold road. The surrounding strongmen trembled inside, and Emperor Yi Qing passed by. Yes. Yi Fuxian smiled calmly and looked at the others. Do you think that the successor who follows Emperor Yi Qingdai has a future, or is it better to follow Chia Fan? Don't listen to his confusion. If you go with him today, do you think he won't kill you for revenge? Chia Fan said coldly, cut him right away, and I will get a big reward when I come back. Their eyes that are strong in the state of law are flickering, and they think that the soldiers and mighty people who may continue to hunt behind them know that it is unrealistic to follow Yi Fuxian, and they can't escape. Oh. Two figures rushed towards Yi Fuxian at the same time. Although they are a little reluctant, in order to survive, they still want to kill. Such a character died at their hands, and it was worth being proud of. Feeling the breath of the two people, Yi Fuxian released his spell in a panic, but it was in vain. The other party ignored his spell attacks and continued to advance. The long spear killed him. Yi Fuxian turned around suddenly, facing away. With a spear. He lowered his head and looked at the Waji in his arms with a smile. He tried and tried, but still couldn't hold back the life of a king. Luo Tianzi asked him to die. In this state, he seems to be able to die. He had not even seen Luo Tianzi. If there is a chance he really wants to meet. Stupid. Hua Jiu stretched out her delicate hand and caressed Yi Fuxian's handsome cheek. Her beautiful eyes were also smiling and brilliant. He knew that Yi Fuxian was dying and still wanted to stop the blow for him. Stupid. Sigh. There was a squeak, and the spear pierced into Yi Fuxian's body. At this moment, the smile in Chia Fan's eyes became even more sinister. Finally, did you die? No matter how talented you are, what can you do? The strong man in the state of law, who stabbed his spear into Yi Fuxian's body, also secretly sighed, so incomparable, he was killed. His palm was strong, and he wanted to pull out the spear, but it was just a swipe, and the spear was not pulled out. A gurgling sound came out, as if his blood was roaring, and then, the strong man was shocked to find that the spear he stabbed into Yi Fuxian's body melted slightly and turned into nothing. What happened? He looked up, looked at Yi Fuxian's back, and at this moment, Yi Fuxian's body seemed to be broken. A dazzling ray of light shot out from his body. After that, there were 2, 3, and innumerable rays of light, and their brilliance was like the light of an emperor. 20 feet, and 100 feet, this terrifying sight rocketed like a miracle. I saw Yi Fuxian's life soul. The ancient tree bloomed with the emperor and turned into a god tree. The back view is no longer that of a young man's back, but an emperor's. Chapter 104, Execution. Yi Fuxian stood there, bathing Shenhua, and he did not understand what was happening. In Yi Fuxian's perception, the blood flowing on his body seemed to turn into gold, and there was a golden figure, like the figure of an emperor. In his perception, this figure is very faint, he can't see his face clearly, and can only feel his temperament. He is high above the world, and the endless light of the emperor is also here. Body covered. I saw the image taking steps in him, getting closer, as if in his mind, the momentum is getting stronger and stronger. Yi Fuxian wants to see his face, but still can't do it. Here he wondered who left the imperial will in him. Does this have anything to do with his life? However, at this moment, he didn't have time to think too much. The figure of the emperor seems to be dancing, with one stroke, one palm, wide open and close. Every action contained imperial power. With the action of the figure, Yi Fuxian only felt himself. The blood in the body roared, and the soul also roared. The momentum of the whole person rose madly. It was like a power that did not belong to him. The life soul devours the aura between heaven and earth like a god tree. His breath changes, and he only feels full of endless power. Every action of the emperor figure on his body seemed to be branded in his mind. Hua Ziyu was hugged by Yi Fuxian. He naturally saw Yi Fuxian's change, but he was stunned when he was ready to die. At this moment, Yi Fuxian's light is too beautiful, like a true emperor on earth. Although he has not seen Luo Tianzi, he must have never had such a temper, as if he was a fated emperor. He suddenly thought of Zhao Xiang's life count, and Yi Fuxian's question to Nan Dutai. At this moment, he finally understood what the emperor's life number meant, and he knew that Zhao Xiang asked Yi Fuxian if he wanted laughter after Qingzhou City returned. It turns out that this is the true meaning of his life. They were meant to be together. Thinking of red eyes and red tears falling, native destiny does not bear it. Thinking about this, his beautiful eyes became more determined. Because the number of lives is so, what else can stop them in the shared world? The man she loves is a real-life emperor. Chia Fan was shocked to see everything in front of him. His funny smile was frozen there, and the strange situation in front of him completely overthrew his thoughts. What is this? Why did the spear penetrate into Yi Fuxian's body and not only did not kill him, but made him so beautiful, transformed into an emperor, and bathed in the brilliance of a noble emperor, who would tell him what was going on? It was completely unreasonable to see everything happening in front of him. This really doesn't make sense. A practitioner's practice requires one step at a time. Nothing skyrocketed. Even if a strong person leaves something to Yi Fuxian, what is needed can a strong person at the level do it? Chia Fan, he didn't know. He looked stubborn and shouted at the two strong warriors in front of Yi Fuxian, kill him. The two strong people in the state of law were also stagnant there, watching Yi Fuxian's changes in shock, and hearing Chia Fan's roar, a cold flash of killing them in their eyes, aura condensing spears, and terrifying palm flames. Killed Yi Fuxian's body. However, this time, they failed to hit Yi Fuxian's body. At this moment, the Emperor's light that surrounded Yi Fuxian's body turned into a hazy figure. The figure of the Emperor, surrounded by the glory of the Emperor, is full of spears and palm prints. The Emperor's light is blocked, can't get close to Yi Fuxian's body at this moment. Not only the faces of the two of them changed, but the faces of Chia Fan and the surrounding strongmen were extremely ugly, giving birth to a bad feeling. Many souls disappeared, leaving only the ancient trees of the world. The ancient trees of the swaying world looked like divine trees. A rustling sound came out, and the ****** trees gave birth to vines, moving towards Yi Fuxian at a very fast speed. Behind the scenes, two strong men in the country of France rolled over. The look of the two changed greatly. The spear and the flame broke out at the same time, and they wanted to destroy the vines. However, the vines that rolled up their bodies seemed indestructible. They instantly entangled their bodies into the air, and a rustling sound came out. Small branches pierced through their bodies, and above the void, a rain of blood began. Yi Fuxian turned around slowly. He raised his head, looked at Chia Fan. The eyes were like gold, like the eyes of the Emperor. You are not Yi Fuxian, who are you? Chia Fan felt a trembling tremor, too strange. At this moment, Yi Fuxian's body was full of imperial intent, but it was not his at all. What did you say? Yi Fuxian said coldly, and then a wing appeared behind him, and a fluttering wing fluttered. He jumped up, holding Wajiayu towards Chia Fan. In the body, the emperor-like figure is still dancing, every movement is imprinted in his mind, and at the same time, he inspires the momentum around his body and makes him stronger. Yi Fuxian also understands that this power is not his, but at least for now, it is his. Kill him. Chia Fan stepped back, but ordered to the people next to him. The people trembled one by one, some did not dare to come forward. Go on. Chia Fan was angry, his own body retreated, and he turned and ran, towards the battlefield behind, where there are strong people in the sky, and there may be vitality. Oh, I saw Yi Fuxian's wings spread. The terrifying wings seemed to cut through space, making a loud, sharp sound, but for a moment, Yi Fuxian came before the surrounding strong people. His body was not every stop, like a flash of lightning, the sound of the crickets continued, and then the space continued to bloom with blood and the screams continued. Uncle. Chia Fan seemed to have an inkling of what was going on behind him. He growled forward and shouted, save me. I saw a powerful figure in a heavenly position paying attention to the situation here. He exited the battlefield and went to Chia Fan, and his body directly passed through Chia Fan and killed Yi Fuxian. This upcoming figure is Chia Feng's disciple, the repair of the sword in the sky. The sharp sword blooms and dazzles Yi Fuxian. He doesn't know why Yi Fuxian has such a transformation, but at this time there is no time to care about the cause, only one, kill he. You rest. Yi Fuxian said softly to Hua Jiu. The vines rolled over, and he rolled up Hua Jiu's body behind him, and the endless vines were thrown onto the wooden bed. Feel comfortable. Then, Yi Fuxian raised his fist and smashed it towards the advancing sharp sword. This fist was not a combat skill that he practiced, but synchronized with the movement in his mind. It was natural, and the endless momentum of the Emperor around him exploded together, and immediately a terrible storm broke out, annihilating the sword coming from him. The face of the sword repair was very ugly, but he couldn't let him think about it. Yi Fuxian's body danced in the void, and a second punch came out. That simple and fistful punch was like the power of heaven and earth, the meaning of an emperor. Shadow clung to him and blasted the punch in sync with his movements. The power of the emperor, the surrender of Kangsheng, cannot be resisted. The sword repair showed a terrifying look, and the endless potential brought by the emperor's fist rolled into his body, and then there seemed to be a thunderous explosion between the heavens and the earth. A sword repairman in the sky was directly broken into bones, and the bones remained. No. Chia Fan was afraid to see this scene, only feeling hopeless. His uncle, Jian Shi of the heavenly world, was completely obliterated by Yi Fuxian's fist. His body collapsed, and his body turned into nothingness. Shivering, there was no evil smile in his eyes, only deep fear. However, Yi Fuxian felt at this moment that the Emperor's will in his body was at its peak, and his dancing body was slowly becoming slow, as if it would end at any moment. This gave Yi Fuxian a feeling that the Emperor's will could not last forever, and there was not much time left for him. In addition, the appearance of the Emperor's will must teach him a series of exercises. Thinking of this, the wings flashed again, and the speed was extremely fast, and they immediately joined the battlefield of Nandu Wenyin and Tang Lan tilde. The wings cut through the void, and the sound of crickets continued. The strong were invincible and were harvested by Yi Fuxian. Although Nandu Wenyin and Tang Lan also surprised Yi Fuxian's change, they knew what to do at this time and cooperated with Yi Fuxian. I saw Yi Fuxian exploded with one punch and one palm, and every punch and every palm print contained a powerful imperial power, and the strong people being chased continued to fall, and there were many corpses on the ground. Without time, there are only 2 strong people in the heavenly world. They turned and tried to run away. At this moment, Yi Fuxian was too strong to beat them. Yi Fuxian's body flashed, his body twisted slightly, and then a fist exploded like lightning. The punch pierced through the void and instantly blasted one's body. The divine intent became even stronger at this moment. Seeing the latter's body escaping, Yi Fuxian lashed out at the palm of an emperor overturned everything, chased after him, and crushed the opponent's body. All but Chia Fan were killed. Nandu Wenyin and Tang Lan shockingly looked at Yi Fuxian at that moment. The will of the emperor rose to the extreme at this moment, and the light of hundreds of feet of the emperor shook the bright light. Yi Fuxian didn't pay attention to their eyes, but walked towards Chia Fan. Chia Fan's body receded slightly, and his eyes had endless fear. Let me go, you want me to promise you anything? Chia Fan looked at Yi Fuxian. A rustling sound came out, and the wine rolled up Chia Fan's body, binding his hands, feet and neck, so that his body was empty. No, Chia Fan seemed to know what was going to happen, and let out a terrifying roar. His body struggled, but he struggled. The vine that rolled up his body pulled in different directions, as if, execution. Chapter 105, If you want to wear the crown, you have to endure it in the void. Chia Fan's body was pulled straight, hands, feet and head. His trousers were wet, his face long gone, and his eyes closed, crying and pleading, I know I was wrong. Qingzhou City, he first saw Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu on the shore of Qingzhou Lake. At that time, in his eyes, the young Yi Fuxian was just a small character who could be needed at will. In Tianyao Mountain, he put Yi Fuxian's in life is considered a toy, but now Yi Fuxian is executing him. Seeing Chia Fan's misery, Yi Fuxian's face was cold, without the slightest bit of mercy. The vine forced and began to pull. Ah! Chia Fan roared, but with one sound, there was a bloody rain in the void. Yi Fuxian didn't leave and turned around, hugged the vines to Ziyu's flower body, and then walked towards Nandu Wenyin and Tang Lan, said, let's go back to Qin Garden. The vibrations in the body have stopped, the emperor-like figure is gradually becoming illusory, the light released from his body is gradually dimming, Yi Fuxian is getting rid of his soul, and now he wants nothing else, only thinks of one thing and lives. This life is obtained from living with the division. Yi Xiang and Xian he fought for him. He must live. Let's go. Tang Lan nodded. He had many questions now, but he also knew that this was not the time to ask. As soon as Yi Fuxian left, they saw a distant figure rushing towards this open space. The heads of the group were Chia Feng, the head of the Donghai Prefecture, and Han Mo, the deputy head of the Zivai Palace. They are behind them. There are also some strong men in the Nandu family. Chia Feng saw that the face of the ground body turned iron blue. This is his Donghai man, how can this be? How could Nandu Wenyin have such strength? What about his son, Chia Fan? Chia Feng looked at the corpse, but couldn't find Chia Fan. In the end, his eyes fell on the skull, and his heart twitched violently. While moving his body step by step to that side, seeing the frightened face, Chia Feng's entire body exploded into a ruthless sword. Han Mo and several people in the Nandu family were also stunned. How could this happen? There was no tension for this lineup to go against Nandu Wenyin and Yi Fuxian. Is there anyone else? Brother Chia, sadly, the most important thing now is the assassin who avenged Chia Qian's nephew. Han Mo whispered. Chia Feng had a bloodthirsty cold light in his eyes, and he felt pain and felt fluctuations in the void. He said, the aura fluctuations haven't completely dissipated. They should only cover a short distance. They will definitely return to Qin Garden and give chase. Han Mo's eyes flickered and he understood the rationality of Chia Feng's analysis. Okay, they have to make him pay the debt, said Han Mo. The people you meet, kill without amnesty, I want to kill them all over the door. Chia Feng's voice seemed to come from hell, biting cold, making people feel cold while listening. When the voice fell, Chia Feng's body shook, and the royal sword emptied, as fast as lightning, turning into a sword shadow. In the distance, suddenly there was a loud explosion of sound, and the void seemed to explode. I saw a golden light fall in the sky, and its terrifying speed was so extreme that I couldn't see it at all. What is king? Too fast, so fast to surpass their perception. Careful, Han Mo shouted, as his voice fell. A golden light from the sky fell from the sky. Boom! An extremely loud roar came out, and the ground cracked apart. Then, under the eyes of Han Mo and the others, Xia Feng, who had just risen into the air, had a golden-colored long rifle on his body. The spear pierced his body directly and nailed him to the ground from the air. He was as strong as Xia Feng, and no one knew who had attacked him. Gulong. Xia Feng's eyes widened, his mouth was constantly spitting bloody water, and he was nailed without moving, his hands were still shaking. At this time, he still has hatred, only endless pain and despair. Han Mo and Nandu Shijia's corpses shook crazily. What's going on here? Not far ahead, there seems to be a figure walking slowly. He seems to be very slow, but in the blink of an eye appeared in everyone's vision, getting closer and closer. This is a white-haired old man, holding his body, looking very old, holding his hand, step by step in front of the people to stop. Looking at this old man, Han Mo, they trembled one by one, because of fear and trembling. Is this old man do it? You guys, who is going to destroy the door? The old man slowly looked up and looked at Xia Feng and Han Mo with dim eyes. Who's the senior? Han Mo's voice trembled slightly. The old man glanced at Han Mo, and then, a terrible storm swept through the space. This storm contains a terrible dark golden luster, raging in the space, facing Han Mo's body toppled over. Escape! Han Mo shouted, his body emptied and wanted to escape, but seeing the dark gold storm turn into a black hole that devoured everything instantly entangled their bodies into the storm, and the entire space was completely chaotic. The black hole storm involved Han Mo and the people from the Nandu family. Who was the predecessor and why? Nandu's family asked. The old man was still standing there quietly, as if he had not moved. He glanced at the people from the Nandu family and calmly said, the one you are after, is my master. The horror of affection on the face of the Nandu family, shook his head, said, this is impossible. Yi Fuxian had such a life experience, why did he break through the East China Sea alone, worship the East China Sea Academy, and follow the keen magic arts? He had such a life, why did he have to break into the Nandu family alone? Han Mo suddenly remembered that Yi Fuxian had spoken to the sky in the Nandu family. At that time, everyone was inexplicable. But at this moment, he trembled and knew that what the old man said might be true. Senior, we are only carrying out the king's orders. We don't really want to deal with Yi Fuxian and ask Senior to forgive him. Han Mo was a little desperate. If he knew there was a great horror to protect Yi Fuxian, he would not have participated in this matter. Wang Ming, what is it? The old man looked at Han Mo, and Han Mo felt weak. In his eyes, the unreachable king seemed to him nothing. Going against the life of the king, my young master was chased and killed. Then you said, what should be the crime of killing my young master? The old man continued. Han Mo's face was pale, and resistance to the king's life was a death sentence. Honorable, what sin are they pursuing to kill Yi Fuxian? Can't escape. Can I die? Han Mo was desperate. Okay. The old man nodded and said, my lord, The old man said, Xia Feng, Han Mo and the strong people from the Nandu family who were nailed there all seemed to hear something extraordinary. Impossible. Several strong men in the Nandu family were screaming and shouting, how did this happen? Who rejected them? They don't want to believe this is true. You can die. The terrible storm continued to eat away at their bodies. The great people of Donghaifu have no resistance. The body turns into nothingness. The same was true for Xia Feng who was nailed there. It turned into an aura. Because of that, why don't you do anything in the Nandu family? Han Mo growled. The old man slowly raised his head, looked up at the sky, and uttered a serious voice in his mouth. If you want to wear the crown, you have to endure it. The words fell, the storm erased everything, and Han Mo, Xia Feng, and a group of strong people in the Nandu family disappeared. The bones remained, and they were completely turned into the dust of the world. The old man turned and knelt in the direction Yi Fuxian had left. He knelt on the ground and buried his head in the ground. It was indeed the Nandu family who let Yi Fuxian go. How could that woman let other people get their finger? But he didn't shoot, unless Yi Fuxian was going to die. If it wasn't for Xia Feng, they would have caught up with Yi Fuxian, and he still wouldn't have appeared. He knew that someone had died and someone had been injured as a result. But what is this sacrifice? On the road to the Emperor, he needs to understand what courage, responsibility, suffering, and even despair are. He must understand that no one can rely on himself but himself. In order to control everything, he must have absolute power. Even if Yi Fuxian hates him in the future, and hates him for being cold-blooded and cruel, he has no regrets and guilt, and he bears it. It was all because of his mission. The 10,000 years of the divine calendar were about to pass, and he had to grow up. He believed that someday, young people would become the most amazing existences of the Eastern Holy Land, peerless in the world, because he was their son. Waking up slowly, the old man's body flickered and disappeared straight into place, as if he had never appeared. As soon as he left, a group of people came here, looking at the corpses on the ground looking hesitant. Previously, they saw someone coming here, and then the space seemed to be filled with a layer of grey fog, covering it. Sight. I can't see clearly what's going on here. What kind of battle is going on here? Who is this dead man? Ellipsis ellipsis ellipsis. In the Nandu family, a mighty and powerful party arrives. Impressively left-handed. When Zhao Xiang saw the chaos of the Nandu family's banquet, his face was slightly embarrassed. There are still some people here. Zhao Xiang looked at him and asked coldly, what happened? The people of the Nandu family already knew who was coming, and someone bowed. Yu Fuxian and Huajiayu disobey the king's life. Hua Xiang and my Nandu family are hunting. After all, Zhao Xiang mumbled, was he a step too late? Are they hurt? Zhao Xiang asked again. Yu Fuxian was not seriously injured. He threatened to commit suicide with the interpretation of flowers. The injury should not be light. Someone replied. Hearing what he said, Zhao Xiang knew things couldn't be fixed. He looked up at the sky and laughed. Wake up, I tried to change the number of lives, but unfortunately, in the end it was empty. He was plotting for Luo Tianzi. However, his heart was unpredictable. Before that, he used the cave for southern Daoguo, the national match declined, and the mountains and rivers were unstable. After getting the goal, he went to the cave before leaving, and the blood was shining. Luo Tianzi's intention failed to change Yu Fuxian and Huaji's life, but changed the life of Nandu country. Chapter 106, Aim. Qin Yuan, they were anxious for the rest of their lives, waiting. At this time, the car was ready, and there was a monster pulling the car, all of which were prepared by Tang Lan. After arranging things here, he went to sort it out. They met Nan Duan and Yu Fuxian on the road and they were hunted down. In the void, several figures descended from the sky, and it was Yu Fuxian who became them. Hua Fengliu saw Nan Duyan and Hua Jiu in his heart trembled, and he stood for the rest of his life and wanted to move forward. What's wrong with Xiu? Hua Fengliu couldn't help but ask Yu Fuxian who was holding Hua Xiu. Father, I'm fine. Hua Jiu smiled at Hua Mary. Where's my father? Yi Qingshuan stepped forward and asked Yu Fuxian. He didn't see his father Yi Xiang. Everyone except Yi Xiang came back. Senior Yi blocked the pursuit for me. He is strong and he will be fine, Yu Fuxian said to Yi Qingshuan, while comforting Yi Qingshuan also seemed to be comforting himself. How could Godagong stop Hua Xiang and them, and how do you get back? Hua Fengliu looked at Yu Fuxian and they asked, how is it possible to bring back Nandu Wenyan and Hua Xiaoyu with just Yi Xiang and Yi Fuxian? Teacher, senior. Yi Fuxian's eyes were red and his mood was low. Hua Fengliu trembled violently in her heart, and immediately seemed to understand. Thinking of the past, Hua Fengliu looked up at the sky, tears welled up. It turned out that his teacher had replaced his students, wife and daughter with his life. There's no time to be sad, let's go. Tang Lan said. Everyone knew that he was telling the truth, and Hua Fengliu nodded, pushed the rest of his life, and then knelt on the ground, scratching his head in the distance, only hating himself for being incompetent, and hurting the teacher. Yi Fuxian stepped forward and gave Huajiayu to his brother-in-law, and then knelt on the ground, scratching his head in the last direction the teacher was headed. Master, Fuxian will pick you up at Zibai Palace later. Yi Fuxian lowered his head and then stood up, holding Hua Fengliu towards the car. Everyone stepped on monsters and cars. Tang Lan asked, where are you now? Go to the East China Sea first. Yi Fuxian said. The East China Sea is endless, and entering the East China Sea is undoubtedly the best option. What about my father? Yi Qingshuan's eyes turned red and she was very worried. Senior Yi is easy to go alone, and it will be fine. Yi Fuxian reassured. Yi Qingshuan nodded, and he knew he couldn't stay. At this time, a big strong hand reached out for the rest of his life, holding his hand as if to give it his strength, and then the monster left, pulling the wagon into the sky and clouds. After they left for a while, Hua Xiang and Nan Dao Tai took people to Qin Garden. Looking at the empty Qin Garden, Hua Xiang had a gloomy face and said coldly, where are Chia Feng and Han Mo? Must keep hunting. Before that, Xiang dragged me along. Han Mo and Chia Feng kept hunting. There shouldn't be any problem, Yan Xiao, owner of Zibai Palace, said. But what happened to the corpses on the street? Hua Xiang's tone was extremely cold. Obviously, he also saw the bodies of Chia Fan's people. All of them belonged to Chia Feng, including those in heaven. However, according to Yan Xiao, Yi Xiang, who was dragged away by Yi Xiang, continued to run away. Of them, only Nandu Wenyan was in heaven. How could they kill these people? What's more, there were several people who chased and killed the Han Mo, Chia Feng and Nandu families in the past. Unless, there are people hidden in collusion. Now we can only wait to hear from Han Mo and Chia Feng. Nan Dao Tai said, his face is also not handsome, and what they have done to Yi Fuxian today, if the teenager is an adult, he will avenge himself. What's more, only he here truly knows how many lives the left relative anagram predicts. Before Luo Tianzi's intention came, he mistakenly thought that the queen's life might refer to the queen, until Yi Fuxian showed a sharp edge, and thought of Zhao Xiang who gave him the order, and he knew he might be wrong. Go. Take control of the city, set eyeliners everywhere outside the city, and especially monitor the height. Hua Xiang ordered, but he knew in his mind that if Chia Feng and Han Mo didn't follow each other, it would be difficult to catch. If they really ran away, Luo Tianzi couldn't explain it. He went on a blind date to deal with 2 juniors, but ran away. He had no face to return to his life. They waited for a long time. They did not wait for Han Mo and Chia Feng, and the people who were killed by the Nandu family disappeared, as if they had disappeared from the air. Night fell. Nandao Tai returned to the Nandao family, Yan Xiao returned to the East China Sea Academy, and Hua Xiang went to Chia Feng's house. However, there was no news at all. Nandu Tai learned from the family that Zuo Xiang had visited the Nandu family. After hearing what happened, he left laughing and sighing that he couldn't change the number of lives. Then he led people to leave and return to the city with a big rock. Naturally, there is no need to say anything about the crown prince, and the Nandu family has also lost the Huaji language. Moreover, because of the analytical language towards Wang Ming, Luo Tianzi was afraid that he would have some opinions about his Nandu family. This was why Hua Xiang forced him to take immediate action. He had to properly kill his kin so as not to be liquidated by Luo Tianzi. The big people who came to congratulate Donghai City have all returned to their mansions. They also heard that Hua Xiang did not catch anyone, so he couldn't help feeling a little strange. Hua Xiang was so lined up. How did Yi Fuxian escape? According to common sense, this is absolutely impossible. On this last day of the 10,000-year-old Chinese calendar, no one expected an accident in Donghai City. Hua Xiang was ordered to register the Nandu family's Huajiayu as the princess, and everyone went to celebrate. Everyone thought that the Nandu family would return to the Nandu country stage instead of only being harmed by the East China Sea. The 1-year-old boy broke into the Nandu family, showing peerless beauty, twin souls, and full talent, not only to fight against the king's life, but also to persuade the Nandu family to overthrow the kingdom together. He left alive, but Hua Xiang didn't drop him. In the end, she picked up the fairy tale of the fairy tale princess. No one knew where she would go, but everyone knew that one day she would return. Ellipsis, ellipsis, ellipsis. The 10th year of the Shungzhu calendar is coming on the first day of the new year. There are many rumors in the East China Sea Academy. I heard that the book was compiled as the princess's concubine, and almost died for Yi Fuxian. I heard that the genius of Donghai Academy, who has blocked the door of Zibai Palace, has both hands and soul, and practices all attributes. One person swept all the strong people in the legal field. Zhuo King is not an opponent. At Donghai Academy, he kept hiding. With strength. They also heard that Zibai Gongchen played the last song to save Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu. Since then, Zibaigong has no old king. Yi Xiang rebelled against the king's life for Yi Fuxian, son of Chia Feng, head of Donghai Prefecture. Chia Fan was tortured by execution, Chia Feng was missing, and also missing were Han Wei, the vice president of Zibai Palace, and several powerful people in the Nandu family. Yesterday, a terrible storm seemed to erupt in Donghai City. The storm ended with the disappearance of Yi Fuxian and the others. Outside the Donghai Zugong Palace, there were 2 beautiful figures standing there. Looking at this Zugong Palace, it was Lin Ziyu and Xiaohei. Lin Ziyu's father was also at the Nandu family mansion yesterday and witnessed everything that happened. I didn't expect his talent could be so strong. Xiaohei sighed softly. After hearing what happened yesterday, the hearts of the 2 girls were extremely shocked. I plan to participate in this year's East China Sea Academy Spring Festival, to train at the East China Sea Academy. Lin Ziyu said. Why do you suddenly want to go to Donghai Zugong to train? Xiaohei wondered. Lin Ziyu said calmly, after the Spring Festival, Wang Cheng will have a banquet to listen to the wind, and the people from Donghai Zugong will go to participate. I want to go with me to see. For other reasons, he did not say that he would train at Donghai Zugong. One day, he will come back and be sure to take a look. Listen to the wind party. At that time, the geniuses in the 36th Nandu royal house will leave. I don't know how many geniuses there are. Can also shine the most dazzling light of course. Lin Ziyu nodded gently. Yi Fuxian's talent that was revealed yesterday, the entire Nandu country, it is difficult to find a second person. The twin soul of life and soul, and all attributes including spiritual attributes, martial arts are very powerful. The talented piano master is simply unthinkable. The Sunshine Boy once encountered on a ship in the East China Sea would have extraordinary talent. At this time, the East China Sea is also on board. A row of figures stood on the bow of the ship, the sea breeze blew, and their clothes were hunting and hunting. In the sky, a monster beast descended from the sky, carving a black wind, which landed in front of Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian stepped forward and said to Yi Qingshuan, who was standing in front of him, I asked the Black Wind Eagle to investigate the situation in the lower East China Sea. Senior Yi should be fine, rest assured. Yi Qingshuan nodded, but was still unavoidably worried. Fuxian, where are you going? Tang Lan stepped forward and asked. Yi Fuxian glanced at the vast sea and asked, is there no enemy in the neighboring country of Nandu country? Going north along the East China Sea, you can go to the border of Donghai province, where it borders Kangai country, and Nandu country and Kangai country are enemy countries. War broke out in 300 years. Tang Landau. Then go north. Yi Fuxian looked to the north and said, let's go to Kangai Kingdom, Wangcheng. He originally wanted to go to King Nandu City to attend the Wind Party. Luo Tianzi destroyed everything with a will. Since the Nandu Kingdom didn't allow it, he went to King Kangai City. Okay. Tang Lan nodded. With Yi Fuxian's extraordinary talent revealed yesterday, there is no need to worry about nowhere to stand. If he wants to take the initiative to find supporters, it is really easy. He chose to go to King Kangai City, apparently going to take revenge on Nandu State. Chapter 107, Kangai Academy. A month later, Kangai King City, Kangai City. Kangai City has no walls and is centered in the palace of Kangai City, which is constantly spreading in all directions, so it is very vast. At this time, in the space above the outer edge of Kangai City, there are many huge monsters flying in the air, there are also powerful swords, and there are people who walk with wings in the air. In the sky of Kangai City, it is extremely spectacular. Countless strong people have come from all over Kangai country. Among the many beasts flying in the sky, there is a demon tiger with wings, and a mule car is pulled back. There are several figures standing behind this white tiger. The first two people were 17 years old. Around ages, one is handsome and the other is famous. These two young people were Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiyu, who had come from far away. Behind them were the rest of their lives and Yi Qingshuan. In the car, there were Hua Fengliu, Nandu Wenyan, Tang Lan, and Tang Wan. Tang Lan's great disciple, Ni Bing, had his own house, and left Qinyuan in Donghai City that day. After experiencing the changes in the East China Sea, Yi Fuxian's face seems to be a little innocent, and he no longer looks like a teenager. Moreover, the emperor's temperament has increased and his temperament has changed slightly. At this moment, he was a little more handsome than before, even more brilliant. It's finally arrived. Yi Fuxian whispered. The king city of the Kangai kingdom was more magnificent than Donghai City. In this ancient city with a long history, the tall buildings soaring into the clouds are all traces of time, ancient and elegant, adding a little more sense. Hua Jiyu nodded slightly. I once came to Donghai City for the first time with my master and the rest of my life and stood behind black wind carving. I was thinking of conquering it. However, Donghai City gave me unforgettable memories for a lifetime. Yi Fuxian smiled and looked at the majestic king city in front of him, said with ridicule. Along the way, Huajiayu's injuries have been healed, but what happened in Donghai City is still engraved in their hearts, especially for Yi Fuxian. Luo Tianzi, Huazhang and Zibai's intention to kill the palace, the choice of the Nandu family, and the teachers are all unforgettable. Even if you want to forget, you will never forget. When Hua Ziyu heard Yi Fuxian's words, she stretched out her hand, held Yi Fuxian, held her tightly, her beautiful eyes looking forward, her eyes were firm. She also couldn't forget what happened in Donghai City. They can come here, yes, in exchange for a life with the division. Yi Fuxian felt the temperature in Hua Ziyu's palm and held his hand tightly. He planned to go to the king city of the Nandu kingdom, but now he has come to the king city of the Kangai kingdom. He would never allow anything to happen in Donghai City. Once again, the sharp knife of the fairy, and the sadness of the teacher, often stung him. Tang Lan stepped out of the car and looked at the beautiful city below, still talking about the big situation in the surrounding sky, and said, Fuxian, where are you going? Kangyi Academy, Yi Fuxian said without hesitation, seemingly plotting. Kangai Academy is similar to Nandu Kingdom's Nandu Academy, and its status is on par with Nandu King City's Nandu Academy. The background is the royal family of the Kangai Kingdom, a gathering place for talent, and even royal children have trained in it. However, Yi Fuxian went to Kangai Academy not to study, but to the upcoming party, Fenghua Banquet, which would be held in Kangai King City. The Fenghua Party is the feast of the heavens. The king of the Kangai Kingdom conducted a test on the descendants of the Kangai Kingdom. Without Luo Tianzi's will, he must now prepare to participate in the Wind Party in the Nandu capital, but the things in the world are so unpredictable that he appears in the Kangai country, Nandu's enemy, preparing to participate in the Wind Party. Kangai Academy is the place to register for the Fenghua Banquet. At this time, many powerful figures above the void brought young juniors, perhaps for this reason. Tang Lan heard him say he understood what he meant when he went to Kangai Academy, and he said, are you all planning to attend? The Fenghua Party is based on age, and anyone under the age of 20 can participate. This means it's possible there will be many strong men with geniuses. From the East China Sea to Kangai King City, they obviously know something. I know. Yi Fuxian nodded his head. As long as the Fenghua feast can be named by the emperor, they can enter the Fenghua list. The top 10 people on the Fenghua list all got prizes. The top 3 people can make conditions to the king. Not too much, generally the king agreed. What condition do you want to mention? Tang Lan asked. Yi Fuxian glanced back at the flowers in the car, saying, I want to restore the teacher's cultivation. Tang Lan's eyes flashed. If she could give the king a condition, with the power of the Kangai king, there would be a way to do it. Although the Fenghua list is named by the emperor, it is not measured by strength, but if the strength is indistinguishable, being named in the top 3 may be difficult, unless you are prepared to expose talent. Tang Lan said, I'll be in the top 3. Yi Fuxian's eyes were very firm. The king of the Nandu kingdom will kill him somehow. Now in the Kangai kingdom, even if he shows some talent, the emperor will only take care of it. Style. The teacher has died, the teacher's injury has not recovered. This time, he will never miss it again. Okay. Tang Lan nodded. Yi Fuxian clearly had such determination. I'm coming with you too, Hua Jiu said softly. Fairy, are you so beautiful, aren't you too arrogant? Yi Fuxian glanced at the embarrassing face. As he grew up, the 17-year-old boy slowly bloomed on the most beautiful face. Go to yours. Hua Jiu glanced at him. He's so serious now. However, Hua Jiu was happy. In this case, Yi Fuxian seemed too silent. Instead of a cute and bright young man, he was clearly stimulated in Donghai City. He wished to see her be herself, though a bit shameless, but she still liked him. I'm here too, said the rest of his life. Of course. Yi Fuxian looked at him. The white tiger monster continued to advance. Yi Fuxian did not go down to ask for directions, but followed the mighty team in the sky. The direction most people were heading in must be the direction where Kangai Academy was located. No doubt. Kangai Academy is located in the central area of Kangai City, next door to the royal palace of the Kangai Kingdom. It can be said that this is a true aristocratic academy. The prince and princess characters all train at the academy. Otherwise, even children from aristocratic families cannot step into it. Kangai Academy's background was in the royal family, and there was no need to care about anyone. At this moment, outside of Kangai Academy, the monsters, swords, and strongmen walking in the sky became denser. I don't know how many there are. The Fenghua banquet will be held in 3 days. There are people all the time. Come to Kangai College to apply. Hi Fuxian, they finally came here, and as he expected, all kinds of strongmen gathered on this side. At this time, many of the great demons that appeared in the sky have not seen him. The atmosphere is terrible, and even he has the rank of the sky. Yes, Yi Fuxian wants to control some powerful monsters with his ability to control beasts after he becomes stronger. Many monsters and powerful figures landed on the ground near Kangai Academy. After all, none were brave enough to barge into the academy directly. Yi Fuxian and them also fell to the ground. He saw Hua Jiu's face was covered with a layer of veil, which blocked the pretty face. It seems that you also know that you look too evil. Yi Fuxian smiled. Hua Jiu liked it. Yi Fuxian turned and looked at Yi Qingshuan and Tang Wan. Qingshuan and Wana, do you want to attend this Fenghua party? I can't. Yi Qingshuan shook his head. I won't be leaving again, Tang Wan smiled. They both knew that cultivation was slightly worse, and there was no point in attending the Fenghua banquet. Yi Fuxian nodded and said, then you find a hotel near here, and I will let Haibing Diao follow. All right, Fuxian, please be careful, Nan Duan asked. It's okay, Yi Fuxian laughed, and then he walked towards Kangai Academy with Hua Jiu and the rest of his life. When I first entered Kangai Academy I saw many people walking in the same direction. There was a group of elders sitting in front of books and records. Those who came to the Fenghua party, Yi Fuxian, they stepped forward, waited for a while, then it was their turn to come to a book box. There was an old man sitting next to the bookcase, who was still recording, and then looked up and asked, name, age, cultivation, occupation. Yi Fuxian, 17 years, 7-star glory, Master Kinyan. Yi Fuxian said, after the first battle, he broke through. Yayu, 17 years, 7-star glory, Spirit Master. Yayu said. The rest of my life, 17 years, with 7 stars of glory, majoring in martial arts. The 3 of them are now in the same state, all of them are 7-star glory countries. The old man looked at the 3 of them and they were the same age, then he gave each of them a wooden board containing the information they had just said. A woman came over, smiled, and said, you follow me. The woman was wearing an academy gown. During the Fenghua party, the Kangai Academy disciples were in charge of some etiquette. Thank you. Yi Fuxian nodded, and the 3 followed behind the woman. The woman was about 18 years old, her eyes were beautiful, and she looked very beautiful. My name is Ken Chia. The woman glanced at Yi Fuxian further. He had seen many handsome figures in the academy, but handsome people like Yi Fuxian were rare. The woman's feelings were very sharp. The flower interpreter next to him lightly held Yi Fuxian's hand. Ken Chia's eyes lit up, and he looked at the flower translator with a smile. This woman is very attractive. Although Yi Fuxian is handsome, as a Kangai Academy disciple, he is not an idiot, and Master Qin Yin of the Seven-Star Glory World is not worth mentioning compared to Qin Zong by Qiu, who entered the academy not too long ago. Chapter 108, Qin Zong Bakyu. Apart from Kangai Academy, there are also some very strong Zongman family troops, and the disciples they cultivate are also very great. These celebratory feasts will not be missed by those people. Qin Zong is the power of Kang Yeguo, who uses Qin Tao as his ancestor. There are not many Qin Zong disciples, because they only accept piano masters, but for this reason, the strongest piano masters gather at the piano case. By Qiu, the most outstanding disciple of Qin Zong's younger generation, Master Qin Yin, is said to have entered the realm of law, and is extremely talented. A while ago, Bai Qiu led Qin Zong's disciples to Kangai Academy, and Ken Chia saw Bai Qiu with her own eyes. His face is also very handsome. Therefore, Master Qin Yin of Seven-Star Glory Realm is not Qin Zong's person. If he came to participate in the Fenghua banquet, even if he passed the first test, he would only play a role in the Fenghua banquet. Mo said by Qiu, even Qin Zong's other disciples, could stabilize the young people lying beside him. Of course, this Ken Chia would not say that, but only took the lead with a smile, and said, Fenghua Yan's first test was carried out by my Kangyi Academy, and now I will take you to the assessment site. Yi Fuxian nodded. Because they know the Fenghua party, they naturally explore some news. The Fenghua feast is a test for the emperor. It is impossible for anyone to participate. After registering, they had to pass the Kangai Academy preliminary examination to obtain Kangaiga Fenghua. Qualify for the party. Kangai Academy, the gatekeeper for the emperor. Yiyuan from Kangai Academy was so talented at this point that many people who had come to register for the Fenghua banquet had gathered here for the preliminary test assessment. This is a rating site. In the middle of Yiyuan, there was a high platform. At this moment, there were two figures fighting above him. They were the ones who had come to register for the Fenghua party. In front of the high platform, there were three Kangai Academy elders. I will help you pass the bookmark. Ken Chia smiled at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian nodded, and handed the bookmark to Ken Chia. And then Yi Fuxian found that Ken Chia also took a bookmark and put it with them together. Ken Chia, jokes in Glory Realm, Master, I will also participate in this glorious feast. Ken Chia said with a smile, introduced himself again, briefly said to Hua Jiyu, and then walked towards the elder. Hua Jiyu's beautiful eyes were calm. He knew that Ken Chia had told him on purpose, but he didn't care. The reason why he held Yi Fuxian's hand earlier was not because he was not confident, but he trusted Yi Fuxian too much. Attractiveness to women. The two people fighting on the stage were the 8 stars of Glory Realm, a mage, and a martial arts practitioner. However, Yi Fuxian found a strange image. At this time, most people's eyes are not on the two people fighting, but on another recipe. There was a group of people in white uniforms, all over their bodies. No stains, that's Qin Zong's person. The strongest piano masters in Kang Yeguo are all from Qin Zong. Is the man in the middle of Bakyu? It really is Yushu Linfeng. Some people around think that Yi Fuxian shows a strange color, and Kang Yeguo actually has Qin Zong. The so-called strongest piano master is from Qin Zong. He looked at a handsome young man with a slender figure in the center. He was 18 or 19 years old, with a unique temperament, a handsome face, and stood out among Qin Zong's crowd. At this time, there was a figure walking beside Bai Qiu, wearing academy clothes, and the two were smiling and talking, and they didn't seem to care about the battle in the middle. Ken Chia handed the bookmark back to Yi Fuxian and saw Yi Fuxian looking at Bai Qiu with a smile. It's Qin Zong, Bai Qiu. Qin Zong's best descendant. It is said that he stepped into the Jing French phase, like you, is Master Qin Yin. People next to him is my academy brother, Yu Jiang, who is also the state of Faxiang. These two are one of the most wanted people on the Fenghua list. Who else? Yi Fuxian asked. Ken Chia looked at Yi Fuxian, thinking that Yi Fuxian should not be a person from Wangcheng, otherwise he should have heard something. There are still some people. If you can participate in the Fenghua party through the first test, you will naturally be able to meet, Ken Chia said with a smile, without explaining further. The 7 worlds of Fusion Star Glory, it is unreasonable to know these people. Of course, those characters are not his shoulder. Yi Fuxian knew Ken Chia was reluctant to say more, nodded and said nothing, watching quietly. Someone continued to rise for the assessment, and after a long time, finally called the name of the rest of his life. For the rest of his life, he stepped forward and came to a high platform. He found a figure who was like him in the 7-star glory field, but he was a mage. During the battle, you can show your strength more clearly. You tried your best to attack me first. The rest of his life said to the other party, he knows that the other party is the master of the 7-star glory world. If he hadn't appeared, he would have been crushed and defeated. Even if his talent was extraordinary enough, he might still be considered unqualified. You have to come first. The other side smiled confidently. For the rest of his life, he was disrespectful when he heard the words of the other party. He took one step and the battle platform shook. For a moment, the momentum in his body seemed to change, and the magician on the opposite side took a stun, and then the aura of madness gathered. The golden tiger shadow growled and then snarled for the rest of its life, revealing an overwhelming power. The rest of his fists charged forward, with a heavy blow, directly tore apart the shadow of the golden tiger. A powerful force pierced through everything, then struck and fell on the opponent's body, knocking the man's body down. Seeing this scene, the Kangai Academy elders in front marked off the rest of his life, then put it aside and said, "The rest of my life, pass. For the rest of my life." The man who was blasted from the battle platform for the rest of his life, when he woke up, stared coldly for the rest of his life, and left with a grudge. Apparently, he was disqualified for participating in the Fenghua banquet. Your friends are very good. Ken Chia smiled at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian didn't say anything. His remaining life force was more than very good. Now this is just a preliminary test. He didn't need to show too much power. Then, Hua Jiu was called by her name. His opponent was a warrior in the same realm. Although Hua Jiu was covered with light gauze, her eyes were very beautiful, coupled with the perfect figure and temperament. It attracted the attention of many people for a while, thinking that this woman must be a very beautiful woman. Help! The young man opposite Hua Jiu smiled. Hua Jiu didn't say anything. A strong spiritual power bloomed. The other party seemed to feel something. His steps walked towards Hua Jiu. The speed was very fast, but at this moment, an invisible force seemed to be blocking his body. Moving forward, then the wood attribute aura fused into a spell, instantly entangling his body. Bang! A powerful force exploded, and the other party broke free from the entanglement of the spell like an equally fierce monster. At this time, in front of Hua Jiu, a spear appeared and continued to kill towards the opponent. The opponent roared, his body stopped, the war broke out violently, and he continued to bombard the spear that killed him. When I stepped on the ground, my body flew through the air, like a goshawk spreading its wings, and continued to pounce on Hua Jiu. Hua Jiu's beautiful eyes flashed a solemn look, and her steps advanced slightly, just one step. The other body seemed to stop in mid-air, and then the vine continued to roll towards her body, throwing another to the ground. Yes, I will pass. The elders of Kangai Academy nodded slightly and closed their bookmarks, which meant that they both passed the preliminary exam and the loser was a little depressed. In this initial test, he was confident that he could crush the opponent. I didn't expect to meet such a prominent character. Can you really see that woman? The other party stood up politely. Hua Jiu looked at him lightly, then turned and walked off the platform and returned to Yi Fuxian. Many people looked at Hua Jiu in amazement. That's really arrogant. Yi Fuxian, Mogu. At this time, when Yi Fuxian's name was called, Yi Fuxian stepped onto a high platform, the figure standing opposite him, hitting the white clothes, from Qin Zong. It was clear to the elders of Kangai Academy, if Yi Fuxian was not as good as Qin Zong's disciple, then there was no need to attend the Fenghua banquet. The two sat cross-legged and both released Qin Soul, which immediately attracted a lot of attention. Not far away, Qin Zong's people looked at Yi Fuxian with interest. The sound of the piano sounded at the same time. The sound of Mogu's piano was very wild, like a beast coming. The terrible sound of Pentium came from the void, as if many demons were trampled towards Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian's piano voice was very peaceful, melodious and pleasant, as if he was remembering the dead, accompanied by the sound of his piano. The invisible monsters rushing towards him all seemed to change from loud to docile, and then Yi Fuxian's piano voice turned sharp, become sharp, like a sword from its scabbard, cutting through everything. The beast mourns, the sound of Mogu's piano is disturbed. There is no more wild power, and the mental power is chaotic, and Qin will also be chaotic. Groans, Kan's soul disappears. Yi Fuxian, pass, the elder announced. Mogu was defeated so easily. Qin Zong's people showed a touch of astonishment, but did not get the qualifications to participate in the Fenghua party. Pure Qin Yin, with a transcendent mood. This talent is very good. Bai Qiu looked at Yi Fuxian and praised him, and asked, where do you train? Is there a gate? Yi Fuxian looked up, looked at Bai Qiu, smiled and said, follow my teacher's training, I haven't entered school yet. My Qin Zong is a sacred place for Kang Yi Guaken's voice magic. You may want to practice in Qin Zong. Bai Qiu smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. Everyone was shocked by the sight. It seems that Bai Qiu is very good at this Qinyan master, and he immediately introduced him to Qin Zong, and was willing to let him take piano lessons. Qin Tong, which means following him, can often ask him to learn from him. If Yi Fuxian could follow Bai Qiu, it would be of great benefit to him as a piano master. Chapter 109, Lin Yueyao. Bai Qiu's words instantly made Yi Fuxian the focus of attention, even though Yi Fuxian and Bai Qiu both came to participate in the Fenghua party. But they also attended the Fenghua banquet. Many people just want to see or experience it. How many people can really show the peerless Fenghua? There are so many geniuses in the Kangai kingdom, and now they are gathered in Kangai City, the King City, but there are only 10 people the king can name on the list. Qin Zongs by Qiu, Kangai Academy, Zhao Qianfen, and Yu Jiang, the powerful little prince Yu Wangfu, Yu Wuchen, as well as Qianjun from the painting family, Beast Sex Evil Child, Yundi, etc. will be the most dazzling person in this edition of Fenghua. Of course, there is also a peerless beauty that is said to be the first beauty of this country. Therefore, Bai Qiu's suggestion that Yi Fuxian be his pianist was not condescending. As the most dazzling genius of Kang Yeguo, Bai Qiu's future will definitely be very bright. Even his piano, in the future, it can become a big figure in Kangai country. Such an opportunity is not available to everyone. Bai Qiu was clearly saying this because he appreciated Yi Fuxian's talent. Even Ken Chia looked at Yi Fuxian in shock. The 3 Yi Fuxians are in the glory of the 7 stars. Signing up for the Fenghua banquet did indeed show good talent. If Yi Fuxian can follow Bai Qiu's training in Qinzong, what a blessing for him. But the rest of the life next to Ken Chia and Hua Jiu obviously didn't think so. They all looked at Bai Qiu in surprise. To those who knew Yi Fuxian, Bai Qiu's words seemed extremely ridiculous. Let Yi Fuxian be the piano. Where's the confidence? I couldn't stop myself from saying it. Ken Chia glanced at the rest of his life, but didn't say anything. Yi Fuxian on the battle platform was stunned. Before listening to Ken Chia, this Bai Qiu must be the genius of Qinzong, and the genius of Qin Yin Master Fa Xiangjing is also very confident. Because Qinzong is very famous in the Kangai kingdom, the piano sound spell will never be weaker than Qin Lao, but this does not mean that he will be willing to enter Qinzong. Because of Qin Lao, this time he is only Qin Yin's master. Signing up for the Fenghua banquet would naturally not embarrass Qin Lao. As for the piano boy from the other side, listening to these 2 words meant something akin to a book boy, and seemed to be waiting for someone. I don't have this habit. Yi Fuxian smiled at Bai Qiu and replied calmly. Your piano voice is pristine, and your mood is great. However, the magic of piano sound is complex and inexperienced. Obviously, you lack instruction from a famous teacher. Why not give yourself a chance to try? Bai Qiu said again, and his eyes were calm. In his opinion, Yi Fuxian could follow him. Several years of practice would definitely complete the transformation, so he would give the other party a chance. No need. Yi Fuxian smiled, thinking that Bai Qiu's genius as Qinzong really had something extraordinary. His piano sound is not a special piano, but he plays it freely, certainly not so extraordinary. Bai Qiu didn't say much. To him, this was just an episode before the Fenghua banquet. However, many women looked at Bai Qiu, thinking that Bai Qiu was the personality as rumored. Yi Fuxian returned to them for the rest of his life, and then called Ken Chia's name. Yi Fuxian did not rush to leave, but watched Ken Chia's battle. It was extraordinary. When Ken Chia came down, Yi Fuxian praised, "It is very strong. You are good too." Ken Chia smiled. After 3 days outside the palace, you can join the Fenghua party, right? Yi Fuxian asked Ken Chia. Yes, 3 days later, the situation will meet, and the emperor will be there. Ken Chia nodded with a smile. See you in 3 days. Yi Fuxian said, then left. Looking at their backs, Ken Chia smiled. Outside the palace 3 days later, the geniuses of the nation's younger generation arrived. Even though he was amazing, he just wanted to participate and didn't think he could really shine in the Fenghua party. The 3 of them are only 7 stars in the world of glory. Even if they are very talented, they are just busy. Yi Fuxian went along the road of Kangai Academy, and there were still young junior characters that came along the way. He was very clear that those who had the courage to enter Kangai Academy would not be too weak. Outside the Kangai Academy, there are many old characters waiting outside. They come from all over the Kangai kingdom for the Fenghua party, even if their ancestors can't be the most dazzling person in the Fenghua party, but at least once experience is rare. In the void, a black wind carving swooped down and landed in front of Yi Fuxian. The 3 walked to the back of the black wind carving, and the black wind carving suddenly rose into the air. At the same time they emptied, many people emptied at the same time, headed in one direction. There was a mighty figure that seemed to surround one person. That person seemed to have caught everyone's attention, and instantly attracted Yi Fuxian's attention. I saw a distant void, a beautiful monster came from the wind, a monster in the sky, covered with a beautiful purple light. When the wings opened, it covered the sky and the wind howled. Xi Jinping. Yi Fuxian's eyes flashed, this monster is right and wrong. An extremely rare type of monster, Xi Jinping, has the 3 attributes of lightning, gold, and wind, has a strong growth and is extremely terrifying in speed and attack. It is rumored that Xi Jinping is a distant relative of the golden-winged dapping bird. There are golden-winged rock veins. On Xi Jinping's back stood a beautiful shadow. Her figure was sexy and tall, and her muscles were like sebum, and her eyes were like springs. Her brows touched, and a hint of cinnabar between her brows was like the person in the photo. So beautiful, who is she? Someone asked in the void. The first beauty in the Kangai kingdom, Lin Yueya, someone said, looking at the beautiful figure. Lin Yueya, who was known as the first beauty of the Kangai kingdom, was now almost 18 years old, the most beautiful age. Beautiful woman, Yi Fuxian praised the figure close to him. Well, you don't like that. A voice came next. Yi Fuxian turned his gaze and saw Hua Jiu smiling at him. But she's still not as pretty as my fairy. Yi Fuxian smiled, and Hua Jiu glanced at him with a small look, and was a little arrogant, but he also admitted that this woman was indeed very beautiful. Xi Jinping whistled, and the beautiful figure standing on his back looked at Yi Fuxian as if he heard it, with a faint smile on his face, and his eyes seemed to speak. A glance is enough to make people mesmerized. Fortunately, Yi Fuxian is already used to Hua Jiu's temptation, so he can stop his heart. With countless gazes, Lin Yueyao landed on the ground, and then walked to Kangai Academy, many people chasing together. I want this woman to be a wife-in-law, a young man said lightly, and everyone around him just stared at him like idiots. Want to chase after Lin Yueyao? Do you want to dream? If you have a king at the Fenghua banquet, you can let Lin Yueyao check it out. Not finished yet. Hua Jiu saw Yi Fuxian looking back, smiling at him. Otherwise, you can remove the veil. If they see that my elf is prettier than their first beauty in the Kangai kingdom, I don't know what her expression will be. Yi Fuxian smiled, and Hua Ji surprised him, but he is so beautiful in his heart that this man will actually persuade people. Behind him for the rest of his life, this man was old again, shameless. Haibeng Diao spread his wings and left here. Before long, he came to a nearby inn. In the courtyard of the inn, the flowers bask in the sun, and Nandu Wenyan accompanies her to give her a beautiful aesthetic. Come back so soon, is everything alright? Hua Fengliu asked. Well, I will wait for the Fenghua banquet to be held in 3 days. Yi Fuxian nodded, and Hua Fengliu and Nandu Wenyan were not surprised. Yi Fuxian, Hua Jiu, and the talents of the rest of the life, they all took one as they wished. It's terrible, and of course there will be no problems with the first level. Teacher, brother-in-law, do you think we travel like family, elders and daughters-in-law? Yi Fuxian said with a smile. Flowers have a romantic smile, but it feels like it. So, what am I? At this time, Tang Lan, not far away, said coldly. Yi Fuxian froze. This. That room. Tang Lan looked at him. Yi Fuxian's face was black, and the rest of his life could only glance at him sympathetically, and headed to Yiqingshuan. I can't answer it. Tang Lan, if you want, I don't mind. At this time, Nan Duan said. Yi Fuxian blinked, but the master is willing to accept it. Yi Fuxian glanced at the romantic style, thinking that the master's charm was stronger than himself. Do you think I'm rare? Tang Lan replied coldly. Cough tilde tilde. Hua Fengliu coughed and glared at Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian trembled. Mei Mei looked at Hua Jiu, and saw Hua Jiu groaned with a smile. If I agree with my mother, do you think so? No, I just like fairies. Yi Fuxian was not that stupid, and almost died to dare to continue. Ha! Hua Jiu snorted with pride. Mei Mei smiled lightly, which was almost the same. Hua Fengliu and Nandu Wenyan watched the two laugh and play with gentle smiles. After experiencing the Donghai City incident, they knew how difficult it was for them to be together. Their parents could only hope that they could go hand in hand. Okay, go train. 3 days later, the Fenghua party is here. The geniuses of the whole country are gathered. It's not at all the same as when you were at the East China Sea Academy. Huafeng Ludao, East China Sea Academy is just a school in the Nandu Kingdom. Yi Fuxian nodded slightly. He naturally understood that although he was very talented in battle, however, the people who participated in the Fenghua party this time would have many geniuses in the state of law. He must be extraordinary enough to make Tianzi appreciate and name him on the list. Chapter 110, Fenghua Party. 3 days later, very early in the morning. In the courtyard of the inn, Yi Fuxian was practicing boxing. The fist skill is extremely slow, and every punch seems to contain a beautiful charm. On Yi Fuxian's body, blood rolled down, and there was a rumbling sound of blood. In the rumbling and rolling of the blood, the rays of the Emperor's mark seemed to be lightened, and the air that flowed into the Emperor turned into Yi Fuxian's body, making each of his hits seem to carry Emperor meaning. At this time, what he practiced was a series of exercises, taught by the will of the Emperor that appeared in the body when he was forced to despair that day. Yi Fuxian didn't know where the Emperor's training came from and what his name was. He himself took the name for this series of exercises and called it Emperor Ju. Very vulgar, but very suitable, because when using this technique, his bloodline will change, and then be passed on to every part of the body, and even affect his temperament, like an emperor. In addition, every time this set of exercises is practiced, there will be several advantages. Practicing with Yikingdai's training skills can continue to make the body stronger. Even without using any spells, he was also a very talented person. Strong warrior. After practicing for a while, Yi Fuxian stopped and glanced at the sky. When are you going to start? At this time, Tang Lan came here and asked Yi Fuxian. Get ready, Aunt Tang, you want to go? Yi Fuxian asked. I'm not interested, but your teacher wants to check it out. I'll be together if nothing happens. Tang Lan said coldly. Yi Fuxian smiled and said nothing, that's Aunt Tang. Then let's call the teacher and sister-in-law and leave. Yi Fuxian smiled. After a while, the group gathered in the courtyard, then went by the monsters and left the inn. While Yi Fuxian and them departed, monsters and silhouettes continued to rise in the sky around Kangai City, all heading in the same direction. In the direction of the Kangai City Palace, for a while, the statue of the whole king is strong. They all came to the sky. I don't know how spectacular it is. As Yi Fuxian moved forward, they could faintly see a palace towering in the distance. Where was the palace of the Kangai kingdom? Yi Fuxian, they also continued to move forward. As they got closer and closer to the palace, they didn't know how many strong people had gathered around them. Their eyes were full of hope. Is this a Fenghua party? The geniuses of the country's younger generation are gathering. I will definitely release my light at the Fenghua banquet and let Tianzi pay attention. I don't know how strong Wang Cheng's genius is. I'm looking forward to it. There was a constant sound popping up all around. There were many people who came, including people from the king's city, but also strong people who came from the cities and towns of the Kangai kingdom, and they were all talented people who had come not far to attend the banquet. Fenghua. Yi Fuxian followed the large crowd forward. The Fenghua terrace outside the palace was already in sight, where the Fenghua banquet was being held. At this time, there is a white clothing line floating in the void, very chic. Qin Zong's people, Bai Qiu is there. There were many people looking towards Qin Zong and Bai Qiu. Now many people in Wangcheng have heard of those who have the highest voice in Fenghua Bang, and naturally they can't help but see more. A mighty beast has arrived. Many people look back. There, many beasts marched forward together, overwhelming. In the midst of the crowd, there was a youth under the age of 17. But his face was carved with pride and wildness. It was Yundi, the most outstanding disciple among the descendants of the beast sect. Lin Yueyao. At this time, a purple Jinping flew to the empty side, and there was a stunning figure standing above him, which instantly attracted the attention of most people. He was talented and he had Kang Yi. In terms of attractiveness, I'm afraid that no one can compete with him. Even Bai Qiu, Qin Zong and the many genius figures in the beast sect couldn't help looking at Lin Yueyao. Flowers are romantic and they watch all this silently. At this time, Yi Fuxian, Hua Jiu and the rest of their lives did not attract attention and no one noticed, but he knew that at the end of this year's Fenghua feast, they would definitely shine the most eye-catching light. Many Tianzhou characters have passed through Kangai City. Finally, they came to Fenghua Terrace. Around the majestic Fenghua Terrace, many palace guards guarded it and kept order. This martial arts field show has a very long history, and it is the place where Emperor Tianzi will be. Also, the Tianzi examination school for princes and courtiers is often here. Right in front of Fenghuatai, there was a very high, majestic place, with the throne of heaven on it. To everyone who came, no matter who rode the monster or the sword in the sky, no one in the air dared to rise above that position. Where is the emperor sitting? Who dares to sit higher than the emperor? Throne of heaven and earth. Only the princes and nobles and talents of the top forces in Kangai City are qualified to sit there, and they need a special gift from Tianzi to be able to sit beside Tianzi to watch the Fenghua feast. Near the throne, there was a group of very famous people. One of them was a young man. He looked around the large crowd around Fenghuatai. His dull eyes showed a touch of pride, and many people who attended the Fenghua party also saw it. Is he Yi Xiaoye Yi Wuchen? Many people whisper. Yi Wuchen, one of the most vocal people of this year's Fenghua party, has cultivated himself into a second-order legal realm, and under the age of 20, it is almost impossible to find an opponent. Without dust, although you are a little prince, but today's banquet, you still have to show your strongest strength. His Majesty will not open the back door for you. Beside Yi Wuchen, said his father Yi Feng. Be the first, Yi Wuchen said. Strong. Yi nodded with a smile. With more people coming here, from the air to the ground, all the figures were human. The Fenghua party is the Kangai Kingdom's feast, which is of national concern, because on this day, the outside of the royal palace can't help but be empty, so that more people can watch the Fenghua feast. The shadow of the sun rose to the east, the sun shone, and fell on the throne. In the palace, a group of people came in a shuttle car. In the middle of the shuttle car, the Queen of Heaven was sitting in it. When they appeared, they attracted a lot of attention. All the princes and nobles in the stands next to the throne stood up, and the figures sitting on the monsters in the sky stood up, all looking at the car. The Prince Emperor and the princes and princesses got off the carriage and stepped forward. The Emperor sat on the throne, and the Queen, Prince and Princess sat beside them. Look at your Majesty, look at the Queen. The prince and the nobles bowed to meet each other, and then everyone bowed and worshipped. The Emperor of the Kangai Kingdom looked like he was only around 30 years old. His appearance couldn't be said to be handsome, but he had imperial majesty. Even with a smile on his face, he still felt noble. The queen is very beautiful. Fenghuangxiaxia is dignified Xianshu. It seems like 25 or 60, but it is much more than that. Her beauty was similar to that of Nandu Wenyan. The emperor smiled and waved to the people. Today's Fenghua banquet is being held. The protagonist is my handsome young man from Kangyeguo. No need to be polite, just feel free. Thank you, Your Majesty. The people bowed again, and saw that Tianzi was sitting, and many of them were also sitting together. Fenghua party, the ancestors of the country gathered, and I hope that you will not have any disturbance in the Fenghua party. No matter who you are, you can freely show your talent. I hope to see my descendant of the Kangai kingdom can release the most brilliant if there is an accident in Wangcheng City because of his outstanding performance at the Fenghua banquet, whether it is made by the king aristocracy or the Zongmen family, I will cut it off. The emperor spoke faintly, blocking the heroes, and many people in the Fenghua party had to bloom. One must be angry for defeating the genius of the Zongmen family, and some people will be interested because they have shown their super talent but they are not willing to join. And other reasons will lead to some bad consequences. This is not tolerated by the emperor, this is a party held by him. No matter who dares to add to the chaos, will be killed without pardon, in order to take effect. When several strong people from outside the city heard this, they were relieved, and the party was able to release their own light without any worries. Besides, in the end, I will name 10 people, and Fenghubang will get a reward. The first 3 people can put a condition on me. There is no joke, as long as it is not too harsh, I will do it. The king continued to speak. And then smiled and said, if you like princes and princesses and want to get married or be a horse, maybe I can agree. The emperor's words descended tilde. Many princes and nobles laughed, many people looked at the prince and princess beside the emperor, they were all extraordinary characters, especially the 2 very beautiful princesses, which made many people stir, perhaps it's a horse. However, thinking that only the top 3 of the Fenghua list had this qualification, they laughed bitterly. Indeed, being able to enter the top 3 of the peerless evil from the Fenghua list, even if they are allowed to become horses, Tianzi does not seem to be losing. Why don't I make a pony? Yi Fuxian looked at the princess, who was beautiful. Even if I don't make the top 3, shouldn't I be a princess? Hua Jiu smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. I am kidding. Yi Fuxian immediately knelt down, not to mention his talent, and covered Kangyeguo's first beautiful face with a flower interpretation, without any pressure. Okay, the people who attended the Fenghua banquet came forward, the others retreated and got ready to start. Tianzi said again, and suddenly Yi Fuxian, Hua Jiu, and the rest of his life stepped on the side of the black wind carving and walked forward, not only them. Everyone who participated in the Fenghua banquet approached Fenghuatai, and the others retreated. The Fenghua banquet will be officially held.